Hola and welcome to the Get Down. I'm Ritzy P. Let's welcome our Butterscotch Kings, Richard Ng and Jake Foreman. Richard is a seasoned social impact leader with over a decade of experience driving innovation and growth in both the nonprofit and for-profit sectors, and currently is the program manager and co-founder of IndigiDAO, an initiative supporting Indigenous entrepreneurs to set up economic cooperatives to create a kinship economy. Richard's passion for creating positive social change is evident in his impactful work across a range of industries. Jake Foreman, MCRP, is a specialist in facilitation, development, and implementation of engaging learning experiences for students of all ages, and has created a variety of curricula around education, health, and entrepreneurship. He is also the program director of New Mexico Community Capital and manages the Business and Marketing Essentials course that is designed to build a solid foundation to form and grow business ideas with a personal financial plan for success. Since 2019, Jake has been part of the Indian Country Digital Trainers Program with the National Congress of American Indians and has recently become the first Grow with Google digital coach for Indigenous communities. Hola, Richard and Jake. Thank you so much for being here today. How are you both doing?
Doing good, Ritzy. Aloha.
Love it. Okay, so before we dive into the conversation, can you both tell us your individual journeys into Web3? Why don't we start with Richard?
Okay, Web3, yes. Again, yeah, and Ritzy, mahalo for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity to share our journey and talk about our journey to Web3 and IndigiDAO. So let's see, as a user in Web3, I guess I downloaded my first MetaMask wallet, digital wallet, probably around 2021, 2022. I actually won an NFT from an online contest. It was a ETH homie. One of my friends was running a campaign, so it was like a little like streetwear guy, and he had some crazy hat on. I don't even know how much ETH was valued with it. Classic normie fashion. I lost my passcode though, so I don't even have access to it anymore. But since then, I sort of like followed the Web3 space, and then we'll talk about our history with IndigiDAO. But met Jake, and Jake was just this presence in economic development and Indigenous communities, and when he proposed this project, I was just very blessed with the opportunity. So I sort of really dove into Web3. Still a normie though. I do have another digital wallet and I still have my password. So that's sort of my journey with Web3.
Nice.
And then help manage the DAO now.
Perfect. What about you, Jake? What's your origin story into Web3?
You know, I think it started before the pandemic. I was researching. I work here at this nonprofit called New Mexico Community Capital. We're always looking for new opportunities for Indigenous entrepreneurs. So when I learned about Web3, I went straight to the history. And I found out that it's based off of an indigenous technology, basically the island of Yap and the Yapese people, Micronesia, and they have this row stone. And I just was so enamored that this type of technology that's creating things like Bitcoin and DAOs was actually based on an indigenous culture. So I really held on to that and made sure to share with people that this is from indigenous people. So we need to be a part of the Web3 conversation. Got connected with Richard during the pandemic, as well as Consensus, which is one of the largest Web3 conferences. And I participated in their first ever Web3-a-thon, so Web3 hackathon. And that's really when we built our team together for IndigiDAO. I think that was in 2021.
That's amazing. So can you please continue with the story of IndigiDAO and tell us more about what you guys do?
All right. Well, we gotta go back in time, to a dark time, I think, in all of our lives. We were fresh in the pandemic. And I remember there was an opportunity to go to the Redwoods. And this was related to, again, my research and looking for new opportunities for Indigenous entrepreneurs. Cannabis was just getting legalized in New Mexico. And I thought, who grows the best cannabis? Where's all the business happening? And it's in Northern California, the Emerald Triangle. So I went to this conference, and what was it called, Richard?
Meadowlands.
It was the premier adult cannabis function with all of the major people within cannabis. Richard at the time was working for a major cannabis company, and he was doing social impact work. And so that's when I met him, and we connected with this organization called the Equity Trade Network. So they're all these legacy farmers, people that have been in the industry for a long time. And one of the members proposed this idea of, hey, you know what? We know access to capital is a huge issue. We know that we need to create these supplier diversity routes, ways to be able to connect one another. And he proposed a DAO structure. And at the time, people weren't that receptive to it because, again, they didn't want to, explore cryptocurrency as it relates to cannabis because of all the regulations that are in place. But we really ran with the idea and said, hey, you have a great idea here. I wonder if we could translate this for Indigenous entrepreneurs. And the rest is history. And I'm just so grateful to connect with Richard because he's really been the driving force behind this project for the past 2 years. So please share your version, Richard.
No, I think that sounds about right. Adult camp in the woods for cannabis, definitely the origin story. But no, I think what Jake mentioned, I think it was Jake's vision around, again, how does he support Indigenous communities, especially around economic development, to help achieve sovereignty? And that's sort of been Jake's driver. And it's really been life-changing for me working with Jake around this. So that is the start of IndigiDAO. And now we're a community. We're growing, and yeah, it's just really exciting. But definitely all started up in the woods, in the redwoods in Northern California.
I'll share 2 more things about that because it relates to my Indigenous heritage. I'm absentee Shawnee from Oklahoma, and that's the tribe of Tecumseh. And Tecumseh was a great Indigenous leader creating or recreating a confederacy of other Native American tribes to basically hold on to our homelands. And he used this amazing analogy. It's an ancient analogy. With one arrow, easy to break, right? But a quill of arrows is a lot harder. And I just love that metaphor because it relates to blockchain and DAOs, right? We have a lot of solo entrepreneurs that are artisans, that are potters, that are jewelers, and it's hard for them to get investment, right? It's hard for them to access capital. But as a group of entrepreneurs, right, that's where we could really start to build wealth and resources for them as a group. So that's why we really, stuck on this idea of DAO. But, both Richard and I, we also have that AAPI heritage. We call ourselves Jade Brothers. We both rocking our jade. And we took the whole other direction, right? It's like beyond DAOs as decentralized autonomous organizations, we were talking about DAO and Taoism and Eastern philosophy. And that's really what has been our life-changing part of this project is we gone deep into the DAO, into the philosophy. And that's really the beauty of Web3 and Taoism is that we're kind of shifting worldviews about how we interact with each other and how we transact.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So continuing with learning more about IndigiDAO, Richard, can you tell us what are the core objectives of IndigiDAO?
Yeah. And, just to kind of like piggyback on what Jake was saying, we've really embraced kind of like the concept and the philosophy around the DAO. Like we've literally taken the DAO for what it is, the way, right? So when we talk about like kind of the path for our community, and our community is entrepreneurs, we're really talking about like what is the way, and especially for Indigenous cultures, how do we sort of find that balance in that universe, right? And that path. So we say IndigiDAO is an open source platform that enables Indigenous communities to create democratically governed economic cooperatives, or DAOs. I know that was a lot, but really what we want to know is how can we help entrepreneurs create solutions for the barriers that they face, right? And the barriers are participating in larger markets, access to resources, and just being in communities, right? Being a community that can help support them through the ups and downs of entrepreneurship, but also life in general, right? We also know that Indigenous tech, and when I say tech, I'm saying TEK, the traditional ecological knowledge, and the culture. This is something Jake and we say, it's the source code of everything, right? So we always talk about that. And a lot of our entrepreneurs in our community, they incorporate their culture and their values into their business models. So when we look at the DAO, we're really looking at vessels and how we can incorporate Web3 tools to help preserve this knowledge. We talk a lot about data sovereignty as well, too. So a big part of the core objectives for the DAO is how do we accumulate new tools, right? And explore new structures. I'm Native Hawaiian, I'm Kanaka Maoli. So Native Hawaiians had this concept of the ahupua'a, which is the economic model that they use to really govern and run their society. So resources were being, mobilized from the mountain to the sea, and there was governance around it. When we talk with NMCC, who's our fiscal sponsor, they're big on the kinship economy, right? How do they help develop sustainable indigenous economies as well, too? So this kinship economy is based off of traditional historical routes, right? Pre-colonization. So, I think the core objective for IndigiDAO, again, is how do we use these tools, Web3 tools, these new structures to really amplify the culture of indigenous communities and especially support indigenous entrepreneurs. Yeah, so again, at the essence of the work, we're looking at new structures that can transition indigenous communities out of Western systems of governance and finance and into new structures and systems that can perpetuate culture, preserve knowledge, and ultimately achieve sovereignty.
That's fantastic and very powerful. And I love how you mentioned that entrepreneurs, it's also part of the way of life, right? There's like no real big separation. And I feel like what you're doing in other organizations like yours that are really supporting marginalized communities out there, indigenous communities, is really providing a holistic approach and holistic support from all different angles. And I really, really love that. So, Jake, could you let us know more about how IndigiDAO received a grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and what has that impact been in the development of IndigiDAO?
Wow. Well, it's been a journey and it's been a vision quest. Really, like we talk a lot about indigenous research methodologies. So methodology we chose was the visioning process gifted by an elder, a mentor of mine, Dr. Greg Cajete. He wrote a book called Look to the Mountain, an Ecology of Indigenous Education. And the first step in visioning is asking, right? Saying a prayer, going up to the mountain, really, putting together a question of what we want to seek. And then we actually seek that vision. So when we put together IndigiDAO, we wanted to think about this as not only a DAO, in the kind of traditional sense, but a real future economic system and way of work. And we tailored that language to this foundation, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. They're notoriously hard to get a grant from. And Web3 at the time was tanking. I mean, it was the crypto apocalypse, I think, dating back to 2022. So there was a lot of fear around it. And they were intrigued by the idea of a nonprofit looking into Web3 as a structure, right? And they were genuinely just interested in saying, hey, I don't think anyone else is doing this. You all seem to have a really solid team. Let's explore together. And it was about probably a year and a half of just conversations back and forth till finally we received a grant. We were also able to work with an economist named Dr. David Shrelnick, and he really helped us put an economic framework to what we're talking about. So through this process, we've not only understood what a DAO can mean for nonprofits like ours that are serving entrepreneurs, and how it could redefine how we invest in entrepreneurs, but ultimately we're creating a new economic framework and system. And I think that goes to a lot of our peers just being dissatisfied with our economic system, with our political systems, right? We want something different. And what's really great about this system, it's based in indigenous culture, right? And I think that is just something that a lot of people are yearning for, right? Of like, let's learn about traditional ecological knowledge. So they've been a great thought partner. We meet with our program officer every month to just share about the challenges as well as the opportunities. And the biggest part that was needed is just having funds to have lawyers on retainer, because as a nonprofit, we have to protect our nonprofit status by any means. And that means also working with our board, working with our CFO, working with our accountants, working with our auditors. And it was really challenging. And that's probably the biggest challenge that we've uncovered, is for all of these, entities to really understand how to use something like blockchain, right? Because they're all kind of in this minimizing risk. That's their point of view. So that's been the most helpful. Also, bringing on Richard to be a program manager, to also go on vision quests, and to really share this project and find potential, partners, potential funders, developers. We've been working with a group up in Canada that has a very similar vision to ours, and they have developers. We've been working with folks at Google because we had to do a plan B approach. What if we don't do anything on chain? What if we use cloud-based and kind of transform this project really into how Indigenous people can create data trusts? And then after creating a data trust, how they could start to create their own large language models that could then be used to create their own generative AI applications. So it's really ballooned into something way bigger than I initially thought. We've been able to really change the way that we work here as an organization to bring our participants into decision making, into governance, and to even explaining how we use resources as a nonprofit, because we always seek grants. And now we're really bringing in the voices of our entrepreneurs into the development, implementation, and evaluation. So it's been an incredible experience.
That is fantastic. Well, felicidades. Congrats on getting the grant and, taking it to places probably you didn't even have in your plan, like you said. And I think that's just going to strengthen the power of your vision and your mission. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. So this question is for both of you. What milestones are you most proud of and what's next?
Yeah, I can start that off. So I think, Jake mentioned our main methodology around our R&D has been this vision quest. So there are 7 stages in the vision quest, and we've been focusing on the asking, seeking, making, having, and now we're kind of in the sharing. So again, thank you for this opportunity, because this is definitely part of our vision quest. And I guess the first big thing is that we officially summoned our DAO. So we're on DAO House. We're being governed by a smart contract. We have a cohort around 10 entrepreneurs and community leaders. We're already starting to do transactions, share knowledge and resources. So that's probably been the biggest milestone, that we have the DAO and it's active. We are actually practicing the DAO. Under the umbrella of the DAO, of IndigiDAO. So IndigiDAO is kind of like a mother DAO. We spun out this DAO and it's called Ritzy DAO. So all the members are part of this Ritzy DAO, and that is the entrepreneur-focused DAO. In terms of product, because again, we're in our R&D phase, we've been prototyping different iterations of what the DAO operating system or engine would look like. So again, we're on DAO House. So that's kind of like our open source version of the DAO. So again, we're being governed by a smart contract. We have governance tokens, able to generate proposals and vote, distribute funds using DAO House. But we're also prototyping a DAO engine, as Jake mentioned, using no-code tools, right? App sheets. And this can really help us at least simulate and enhance the systems and the upside to show that the data of the economy of our DAO. So a part of this prototyping, we're going to have a reciprocity calculator, because a big value of our DAOs are reciprocity of trust. So this reciprocity calculator will be able to track the microtransactions of our DAO members. We'll be able to have a more robust proposal generator as well, and then track that resource flow. So essentially we'll have what would be on-chain or the ledger, kind of like our reciprocity ledger, right? And we'll be able to see all the resources, knowledge that's sort of flowing in our DAO. So essentially we're modeling the economic model of our community. So this allows us to generate more activities, and then this no code kind of like simulator, we'll be able to track in more detail the data, and we'll be able to have more protocols to engage amongst the Ritzy DAO community. And we're also, I think Jake mentioned that we have kind of like an AI hacker cohort out in the Bay Area called the AI Amigos. So shout out to the Amigos. They're helping us explore what a DAO is. So this is kind of like a truly autonomous organization. And part of Jake and I on our vision question, we kind of like, we go to all corners of the earth, right? So the DAO, a truly autonomous organization, how can we use AI to help automate the back-end operations of the DAO? So the Amigos are helping us develop chatbots. So really, we can automate the workflow, but also how can we help other people learn everything about the DAO, programming, the resources available, what it is, and use chatbots. So that's going to be part of our kind of like tech infrastructure as well. And then Jake mentioned the blockchain developers up in Canada, Nations First. So they have a platform for blockchain development. They're protocol agnostic. So we're probably going to have a DAO presence on there, but then we'll also be able to explore these other vessels for preserving indigenous knowledge, right? IP NFT, or like Jake mentioned, the data trust, because they're blockchain developers, we'll be able to explore that part as well too. Well, there's a lot of milestones actually. We've done a lot. Like this Vision Quest thing is pretty amazing. Yeah. Jake mentioned our elder, Dr. Greg Cajete, who sort of gifted us the Vision Quest methodology. So we're developing a regenerative leadership and visionary practice curriculum for our members. And that's going to be help them develop as regenerative leaders. And then a couple more. We're able to speak all over the world. So XRPL invited us to Paris to speak to their blockchain developers and residents that they're having, able to share the DAO up there. We were just at a deep tech conference a couple of weeks ago in Albuquerque talking about the DAO, the pathways for artists and entrepreneurs. We were just at Honolulu Tech Week talking about the DAO, talking about INA-based technologies as well. And obviously we were at the Hedera and Blockchain Foundation conference in Orange County as well too. So yeah, shout out to everyone, Honolulu Tech Week, Purple Mile Foundation, obviously Blockchain Foundation and Clev for all the work they do as well. And then the last thing I think that's important, we joined a couple community practices, the BioFi project, and then funding the common good. So this is really helping us explore how to use Web3 for fundraising. What does quadratic funding look like as well? There's opportunities to explore a Gitcoin campaign coming up. So that'd be our first venture into quadratic funding and using blockchain for fundraising as well too. Jake, I don't know if there's anything else as well too.
I think I just got back from Oklahoma City, was just visiting my tribe and other entrepreneurs out there. They love the idea. Everyone's resonating with this idea of connecting, right? Uniting together and really supporting one another. So ultimately, it comes down to collective project management. And I just want to do that. And I know this is probably not going to be the most popular thing, but shout out to Google Workspace for allowing us to just have those open source tools, right? And sharing Google Docs and being on a Google messaging. And that was a part of this project too, is like, what can we do with tools we already have, right? So we don't have to spend money. We don't even have to learn how to code. And we're just so grateful to be living in this time, because not only did we see the rise in blockchain and Web3, right? We saw this now huge rise in generative AI and no code applications. I mean, this is a real huge opportunity for Indigenous people to be in technology. And so the fact that we're able to create tools just from us having an idea and putting into practice and being able to develop code, without knowing how to code is huge. But ultimately, too, there's an appetite from tribes, from other organizations, and we're really trying to just aggregate all those resources. So like Richard was saying, right, with BioFi, we know that we sit under the most biodiversity on the planet as Indigenous people. We know we have specific health challenges that we want to address. So how do we bring in all these kind of separate topics and ideas into one place, like IndigiDAO? How do we get people to set goals around their health and well-being? How do we get people to set goals around regenerative agriculture, being a part of this DAO? And so it's just been amazing to explore all the opportunities. And I think we're really onto something. And I think in this next stage, we're into celebrating. And we're going to start this new vision now of like a go-to-market strategy. And I'm a little worried about it, but I also am like super excited, because I think the biggest milestone that we realized is that we need to create this kind of wrapped out, this entity, outside of the organization to really be a container for resource. And we found the Catawba Nation, which is one of the first tribes to create a digital economic trade zone, specifically to attract, projects and work like ours to, file under their entity. And that's going to be one of the first, that I've heard of, so that we're really respecting this concept of sovereignty, of really individual sovereignty. But when we're talking about tribal sovereignty, I think that's going to be a big word you're going to be hearing a lot in the future around what's my personal sovereignty as an individual.
Right. Wow. So many amazing milestones, and you're only a couple years in. I'm excited to see what the future holds. This is amazing. So let's shift a little bit, our focus on the founders and startups that are part of your organization. If you, each take a turn and share one or two projects that are compelling entrepreneurs that maybe you want to showcase.
So we have 3 founding members of Ritzy DAO. We're really doing amazing work. Again, Indigenous entrepreneurs, and really embracing kind of the mission, right? They're bringing in their culture into their business model. all these individuals are very forward thinking as well too. So they've really embraced the technology. They're all located in New Mexico. So in this cohort, the bio region is definitely focused on Albuquerque, but their reach is pretty extensive as well too. So again, I think it shows the power of the DAO that we can achieve. So first, I guess I'd like to talk about Aquila Martinez. She calls herself Glittering Girl World. She's a technologist, amazing technologist, and she's developing an XR studio as well too. So how does she really incorporate emerging technologies, XR, AR, to visualize, especially culture as well too, right? So Aquila is on the cutting edge of technology, but she's also very much supporting indigenous communities with technology as well too. So with Glittering Girl World and her XR studio, we're really interested to see what she develops, but also with all of our founding members, they also contribute to the DAO as well too. So she's going to help us visualize our Vision Quest methodology as well too through XR technology. So that's really exciting. Maybe I'll talk about Bernina Gray as well too. So she's another founding member of the DAO, another technologist as well too. Bernina has her digital company called IndigiDAO, and she's working on a bunch of things. But what's really interesting is her mobile app, Biso. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Bernina. But I believe it's for a Navajo Nation. And I think she's looking at integrating blockchain. Again, how does she empower the entrepreneurs in her community, also preserving culture? But the big thing is financial literacy as well too, right? So again, Bernina, a technologist, a coder, but also looking at the bigger picture, right? What does financial literacy mean for indigenous communities? And then Jake, maybe if you want to talk about Joseph and Warpony.
Yep. Yeah, Joseph, I've been working with for over 7 years, just as fellow cyclists. And he has Warpony BMX. So he takes youth on bike rides, teaches them how to do BMX, and then has a product line of all recycled bags, hats, handmade, just apparel for cyclists. And what I like about him is that, he has skills to offer, right? Of just learning about laser cutting and laser etching, to sewing, to working with leather. So he's been really there to help us think about the concept of smart labeling, right? And smart packaging. How can we create data stacks for all of these entrepreneurs so they could share with their clients, the work that they do? How are they already collaborating together? And we're all just on a group message chat, just, thinking of ways to improve IndigiDAO. And I think the bigger concept here as a nonprofit organization serving creatives, this is the perfect vessel for an incubator or accelerator, right? You have people that are collaborating together, they're sandboxing ideas, we're sharing resources, and we're providing the tools needed for them to succeed. So this is informing our future programming, as a part of our space. And then we mentioned ResiDAO being Resilience DAO. It's connected to our Resilience Hub, 8,000 square foot co-working space in downtown Albuquerque. So a DAO structure works perfect for a co-working space, right? Around shared governance. How do we transact with one another? How do we share resources? So, I just want to share that it's a perfect vessel for working with a group of entrepreneurs, not just Native American. In the future, we definitely want to work with other founders because we believe in that kind of diversity of thought and knowledge and insight. And so we're so excited to pair a technologist with a jeweler, with a muralist, with a futurist, and just bring them all together. And what comes out of that is truly spectacular. Venture fund for us in the future. We started as a venture capital fund. We're going to go back in that direction, after this work, because we are definitely sold on the idea that as a collective, we can make the best decisions. Of course, paired with technology, even better. Paired with traditionally indigenous ecological knowledge, oh my gosh, you have something major.
Yeah.
Powerful.
Yeah, Ritzy, I just want to add on to that, what Jake is saying too, and this whole structure, we talked about in the beginning about exploring what new structures are. And I think, Jake mentioned this accelerator incubator, and there's this concepts of this bioregional financial facility, right? And how to use Web3 to help ingest funds, or how do you acquire resources? And the concept of a bioregional venture studio, that's what Jake is talking about. And that's what all these founding members, they're helping create as well too. Again, our bioregion that huge presence in with this cohort is New Mexico, but we're looking at, the global bioregion as well too, right? Indigenous communities all over the world, Hawaii, First Nations up in Canada as well too. And we have another entrepreneur, Lydia Cabasco, who is Filipina as well. She's also our XR technologist as well too. So we focus on, just all indigenous, but yeah, it's just really exciting.
No, that's fantastic. Yeah. When I go around speaking and I speak about how emerging tech can help our communities and marginalized communities worldwide, I talk about this, like the global indigenous ecosystem, right? Like it's powerful and how the internet was helpful to help us connect, but this gives us extra power, right? In building your own structures and all those things. And the big part of why I got into emerging tech Web3 was because I heard what a DAO was. And I was like, oh, the light bulbs were like, oh, this is a real great way to help us, our communities with the financial sovereignty, the financial justice component as well, the decision making on our own and not having to really rely on a lot of different already existing entities. But with that being said, Richard, you mentioned recently how you spoke at Hedera's Web3 Education Forum in Southern California in Tustin, along with Congresswoman Young Kim. So could you maybe speak on what role government plays to empower micro enterprises?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, and shout out to Hedera, Betsabe, Nomini,
Betsabe.
Mindset was there too, and obviously, of course, Blockchain Foundation and the Amazing Club for putting that on. I think it was really important to talk about entrepreneurship, the innovation economy, and really how these new tools can help advance that innovation economy as well too. So again, we know the barriers that entrepreneurs face are significant. They're complex, right? So the solutions that will help eliminate these barriers are going to be complex as well too. We sort of have to lead into that. So it takes sort of an ecosystem, right, that consists of the public sector, the private sector, and government to really help collaborate and innovate to influence policies, influence regulations that create more opportunities for micro enterprises. I think that's why the discussion with Hedera was so important. Congresswoman Young Kim, she's an entrepreneur herself, and she's advocating for a lot of the innovations, Web3 and other tools to specifically help out entrepreneurs. She's an entrepreneur herself, right? So, a lot of her efforts on the Hill, they're bipartisan. And these issues that we're looking at, they're bipartisan issues as well, too, right? So for government, I think it's really important for government on all levels to be in community, right? Especially with entrepreneurs and businesses so they can understand the needs of the entrepreneurs, really understand the issues that they're facing and see that there are opportunities to innovate, right? And for things like blockchain, it's not really all about crypto, right? It's a tool that can power economic engines. And especially in our context, I hope we're able to convey that we're looking at Web3 and tools for really social impact, right? And really that's the possibility. So government is huge in this. And if they can be in community, like at the event, that event was a perfect example of the ecosystem, right? Everyone was in the room and we're all talking about the issues and talking about solutions, really. And I feel that's what the role government can play. Being in community, understanding the needs, and then helping advocate on behalf of these entrepreneurs to really empower micro enterprises.
No, yeah, that's fantastic because I witnessed this here in Palm Springs in the Coachella Valley, and I recently attended a city council meeting, but it was the city council on one side and the tribal council, because we're on the Kawiya Band Indians tribe, we're on their land. So that was an amazing, beautiful thing to see, is to see both councils together in a community where all of us could attend, ask the questions, see how they're working together, and see the different ways that they can innovate for the future and how they can utilize each other's resources. So love that. So let's get into, some fun, fun facts, some fun questions. Jake, if you want to go first, what's, something people don't know about you? A fun fact.
Well, a fun fact, I guess it's not that fun, but I was born and raised with cerebral palsy. So I can only use one hand to type. And I bring that up because it's really influenced, again, our design of IndigiDAO. We want to use assistive technologies and ways to do voice-to-text typing. I have to write contracts every single day. I have to get invoices in to cut checks. And that was my biggest challenge as a program director here, is like, we need to get people paid today. For instance, we have a member that needed to go on a trip via a fellowship, but they were going to reimburse him the gas mileage. Well, equity work doesn't work that way. He doesn't have funds to be reimbursed. So, these are the types of things that we're dealing with. And I guess it's not fun, but it's fun to be in Albuquerque. It's fun to be in these situations because we're really at the front line in terms of equity. So we're designing our products that are inclusive. We're making sure that people get paid so they could, get out of this kind of poverty, mentality and world. I'm living in the thick of it. What can I say? Burke to the bay. That's how we do it.
Are there shirts for that? Are there hats?
Yeah,
What are we
right.
talking about? If they're not, let's make those happen.
I
But
love that.
it might not be a fun fact, but it's an important fact, and it's also part of this work, right? When
Yeah.
you're doing community work, you got to think of everyone in the community and
Exactly.
everyone's abilities and access to everyone, right? So I love that. What about you, Richard?
Mine is probably more of a fun fact. I was on The Price is Right. That was like a bucket list of mine.
There you go.
And then at my bachelor party, we made it happen. I actually made it to Bitters Row. So yeah, check that off the list.
That's amazing. I love that. I love that. Okay, so before we leave, let's get into, what advice do each of you have for aspiring Indigenous founders? Jake?
It is definitely a lifelong journey. So it's not going to happen overnight. I learned this time and time again from all of the entrepreneurial endeavors that I've done. It's really about the perseverance. I think it's really about the bigger vision, and that's hard. A long time. Right? I'll just end it kind of with the DAO. I used to pray about getting more resources and getting another grant, and if we just have this amount of money, it will all work out. It's not like that anymore. When we did our last kind of visioning and prayer together, Richard and I prayed to be with more DAO. And I meant that in the right place at the right time with the right people, enjoying beautiful things. And I keep getting those blessings everywhere I go. So it's a real mind shift for me. It's not about a quantity of money. It's not about being successful and getting your name out there. It's like DAO is the way. DAO is peace. DAO is love. DAO is harmony, non-coercive action. And so that's really, I think the bigger goal of mine is to continue to understand DAO, to practice DAO, to share DAO with others. And it's a very spiritual journey, and I think you don't hear that too often when we're talking about technology.
Right.
I'll end with that.
No, I love that. That's beautiful because that's the conversations that I'm having. So you're just showing me that the universe is telling me that I'm on the right track, because entrepreneurship is maybe the mission pretty much stays the same, but it evolves as you evolve. And what was that term? I really want to highlight that term. You said non-coercive action?
Non-coercive action, yes.
Non-coercive action.
Yes.
Because this is another conversation that I'm having in all of the masterminds and communities that I'm in. It's like the being work. It's the mind shift work. It's the just being in it and attracting, right? Like, we don't chase, we attract. If you're just doing the work and being that good person and about community and all that stuff, I love you guys. I can't wait to have these side conversations for sure. Okay, Richard, next, what's inspiring advice for Indigenous founders?
Yeah, I think, again, just going back on what Jake's saying, when we're on our vision quest, we pray and, again, we just totally embrace what's in front of us and what the universe is going to give us, really living in the way, right? So I think for Indigenous founders, be in community with your elders, your peers, your colleagues, but other entrepreneurs as well, right? Talk about life, talk about your business model. Just keep talking about it and keep sharing it so you can really understand what it is. I think, again, what Jake's saying is like the bigger picture, right? That's the most important thing. And life and the universe it's all about the bigger picture. So I really embrace that. Tap into your culture as well too, right? The knowledge and the culture, that's what's going to help you innovate. And really, essentially, that's what's going to be your differentiator. So again, a lot of this is it's self-reflecting, it's meditative, we are talking about Web3 and technology, but again, we're going back to really, again, what the DAO is, right? What is the way and what is the universe like really laying out for you? So, yeah, just lean into it, but definitely be in community. I think that's a huge thing. Find a DAO to join, maybe. I know a couple.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, before we leave, can you let the audience know the ways to contact you, find out more about IndigiDAO, ResiDAO, and all the good stuff? Jake, you want to go first?
Sure. Definitely follow our work at New Mexico Community Capital. So it's nmccap.org. Also, my handles at Cycles of Life for Instagram, IndigiDAO.org as well to follow our work, and our Resilience Hub. That's going to have a new website as well. We're developing that with AI Migos. So it's all going to be no code, up and running with a chatbot. Richard, please share a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. I think right now, main work, nmccap.org. And then we're building out our new website. So yeah, IndigiDAO.org will be the place to find us. And, we're sunsetting our grant in November. So we're going to be putting out our report and all our findings from our vision quest to the world and the community. So keep eye out for that. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And then, yeah, I guess just put yourself out there in the universe and we'll find you. And you'll find us, or the way will find us.
Right.
Right. The way. I love it. Well, thank you so much for all of the work that you guys do individually in your organizations. This is truly the reason why I'm in this space, is how do we, merge these decolonized ways with this technology, right? So that we can help each other and grow and take ownership back of so much that was taken away from a lot of us. Thank you so much for joining us today. And special thanks to our Butterscotch queens and kings out there joining us for the conversation. And be sure to check out all of the Get Down episodes on your favorite platforms. Until next time.